Hello, everybody. Welcome to another hopefully exciting episode of Simply Sherrie. I am a few minutes early. I see my, whoops, that was not, I'm sorry. You'll have to bear with me here. I just goofed something up big time. There we go. Okay, let's try this again. Sorry. Hi, Gabe. Gabe, can you hear me?
I got you. You got me.
Yeah, I got you. Perfect. Okay, so just a couple minutes early. I am trying to make sure that I can't get. Okay, sorry. You are my I keep changing everything up here and it's just not working. There we go. Okay, that's better. So so I actually put out my welcome first of all to everybody. I appreciate everybody. If who's ever coming in today at 1 o'clock in the afternoon that isn't at work and trying to earn a living in this beautiful state of Colorado. Um, thank you for joining us. This will be up on YouTube as well later for everybody, and I'll post it everywhere so everybody can see because my guess is most everybody's at work at the moment. But I want to thank Gabe Evans for joining me today. This is, I think, episode number 4 of Simply Sherrie, my new little venture that I'm trying to get jump started here. And so far, so good. I think I started announcing it on a Friday, and within about almost a week, I had almost 1,000 followers. So that's pretty good. I'm pretty excited about that. We'll see how it works out, but I'm excited. And Gabe, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you're out there pounding the pavement right now in the, what is it in Colorado, 100-degree heat?
Something like that.
It's pretty scary. Yes, it is. So we'll just get started and go from there. I did allow other people are coming in. They're muted. The questions are only coming from me. I will allow people to ask questions in the chat room if they want. And then if there's a question that we haven't gotten to and we have time, I might go ahead and ask that. But for the most part, I'm just letting people come in so that they can watch here for the moment. So we'll go ahead and get started. And I want to say, first of all, congratulations on winning the primary. I don't think I had any concerns that you weren't going to win it. You walked into the assembly and came out of that with what, 72, 73% of the vote?
60, 62.
What was it? Oh, 72 was the night of the primary. You won by
Yep.
72% the night of the primary. So even after the CD8 assembly, you gained quite a few more supporters. So congratulations to you on that. For those that don't know, I was initially the chairman of Congressional District 8. So for many, many months, I didn't say anything, do anything, endorse anybody, didn't want to. My sole job was to make sure that we got through the assembly fairly and well represented so that the candidates all had a fair and equal shot. And so after the assembly, I did step down as chairman because I have moved to Wyoming. That doesn't mean that I don't love Colorado. I'm going to continue to fight for Colorado. I'm just going to continue to fight for it right at the moment from a state where we all want Colorado to mirror in a few years. Would love to have Colorado mirror the makeup of Wyoming right now as far as its political landscape. But Gabe, I'm going to let you start. I'm just going to give you a couple minutes. I guess give me your 2-minute elevator speech that you give to everybody and introduce yourself and let everybody know what you are, who you are, and what you stand for, and I guess what your goals are right now.
Yeah. So first of all, thanks so much for having me on the show with you. Gabe Evans, born and raised here in Colorado. After I got out of high school, I served. Went to college. Joined the U.S. Army in college. Did 12 years in the U.S. Army and Colorado Army National Guard. One combat deployment overseas, and then fires, search and rescues, all the things that the National Guard does here in Colorado. After 12 years of that, did another 10 years in law enforcement with the city of Arvada. And really, that's what pushed me back into politics because started my law enforcement career in 2011. And Colorado was, as we typically are, well above the national average for our crime rate. Colorado is still a nice, safe place to live. And in the 10 years that I was a cop, from 2011 to 2022, we watched Colorado go from above the national average, better than the national average for crime rate, down to we're currently third worst in the nation for crime. We're number 2 for property crime. We're number 8 for violent crime. And I watched all of that stuff happen as a police officer, then as a sergeant, then as a lieutenant. And I couldn't make the difference that I wanted to make for my community because of how I had been handcuffed by idiotic far left pieces of legislation coming out of the state capitol. So 2022, I stepped away from my law enforcement career, ran for and won my state house seat, House District 48. I currently represent from the edge of Commerce City up to the edge of Greeley in the state capitol. And then, as we all know, we were hoping for a red wave in 2022. That, in fact, did not materialize. Republicans are pretty much at a low water mark in Colorado. And I don't care whether or not you're making frozen pizzas or whether you're trying to run a state. Groupthink is bad. We've got groupthink in Colorado right now, and it's making Colorado. We already talked about crime. We're one of the most expensive states in the nation. We've had the highest rate of inflation in the nation. 60% of our kids can't read at the third grade level when they're in third grade. 70% of them can't do eighth grade math when they're in eighth grade. Colorado is the #2 state of the nation for teenagers overdosing and dying on illegal drugs. And that all comes from the imbalance at the state capitol. So I put on my Army hat. I say, how do we restore some balance in Colorado? The 8th Congressional District is the biggest pickup opportunity in the state of Colorado. Nationally, it's a top 5 pickup opportunity. And so, I mean, I'm a soldier, right? I know that we've got to take some ground back here in Colorado. So I didn't have to resign my state legislative seat, but I can't run for that again. I can only be on the ballot once. So rather than running for my safe Republican seat, Republicans have a 20-point advantage in the state capitol. I'm going for broke. We've got to take some ground back here in Colorado. The 8th Congressional District is the biggest pickup opportunity. Running for the 8th Congressional District, all of the big cities in Adams County up to Weld in, up to Greeley in Weld, and then Berthoud and Larimer. Again, national top 5 pickup opportunity for Republicans, and you've pretty much heard the things that I want to work on already: crime, cost of living, education, public safety, and then controlling our southern border.
Awesome. And thank you. Absolutely. And I kind of I'm going to start back at the very beginning, because one of the things that I think amazes me or has impressed me so much with you is our very first conversation that you and I had. We were at a barbecue that was being put on. It was an appreciation barbecue for clients of Marge Klein's. And you approached me and you said, I know we can't really have a major conversation because I know you're the chair, but I just want to give you a heads up and I want to give you a courtesy before I make it public that I am going to announce my intent to run for CD8. And I remember that conversation like it was yesterday. And at first it took me by surprise because I had no idea that, I mean, there was scuttle out there, but last I had heard you weren't going to get into it. And then you and I had a conversation. What was it? What was the one single thing? I mean, you had, like you said, you have a safe seat in 48. You more than likely were going to get reelected to that. You were doing good work down at the Capitol and fighting for Colorado. What makes a person in their first year of politics and holding public office, or their first term, go, wow, I want to run for U.S. Congress? I mean, that's a big jump for somebody. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of knocking on doors. That's a lot of campaign fundraising, a lot of travel, a lot of endorsements. And you took the bull by the horns and you just ran with it. And I have been so impressed from day one, the effort that you've put into your campaign. What made you think that you could do this? I mean, what was it that really just said, nope, I'm going to do it?
Well, I guess it's really two things. So again, I'm an Army guy. If you know, my life is just kind of like a running dialogue in my head about, military history. I have an analogy, pretty much any situation in life, I can make an analogy to some military operation, battle campaign, something like that. And so the one that came to my mind for where we are in Colorado right now, we're where the Allied forces were at the very beginning of the Korean War. So they had been pushed all the way down into this tiny little corner at the southeast side of Korea. They called it the Pusan perimeter. And they were basically completely encircled, trapped, surrounded. They were about to get pushed off of the Korean peninsula. And then replicating the success that was seen in World War II with the amphibious landing at D-Day, MacArthur, who was the general over in Korea, was like, all right, well, we got to break out of the Pusan perimeter. At a certain point, we have to go on the offense. You cannot remain on defense forever. We have to grab the bull by the horns. We have to seize and retain the initiative. We have to go on the offense. We have to find that vulnerable point to be able to push back and start to take back some ground. And so when I put on my thinking cap after, a couple of years down at the state capitol, kind of getting my bearings for the political situation in Colorado, I see the 8th Congressional District. That, again, it is the biggest pickup opportunity in the state of Colorado. We win that seat. It's the first major competitive race we're going to have won in a decade. So even though it doesn't directly impact the state legislature, it definitely sends a warning shot over the bows of the radical progressive leftists who are running the state of Colorado right now that says, look, you guys haven't suffered a major defeat at the ballot box in a decade. That changes now. That changes this November when we rip the 8th Congressional District away from them and we say you've pushed it too far. The folks in Colorado are sick and tired of the high crime, high cost of living, failing education system, open border, sanctuary city and state policies. It's time for a change, and the voters are ready to hold you accountable for that imbalance at the ballot box. So that was the first thing. I've lived my entire life since I was 20 years old and joined the Army, taking those calculated risks. And so, really the only thing that I was risking by not running again for my safe state house seat was my own political career. I knew we'd be able to go find somebody good to take my spot. And we've got a good candidate running there. So my House district is not in any danger. That's going to remain a Republican seat. The only thing I'm risking is my political career. And to me, I've sworn 3 oaths to risk my life for my country. I mean, compared to that, what's a political career? So that was the first thing, is at a certain point, we just got to grab the bull by the horns. We have to seize and retain the initiative. The 8th Congressional District is how we do that. Like I tell other folks, when they ask me, how do you make decisions? The first thing is, look, my faith guides me. So the second part of that was I'm having a conversation with my mom. I'm like, Mom, if I don't run again for my state house seat and I lose the 8th Congressional District, again, it's a battleground seat, and I lose it, I mean, I'm out. I'm unemployed in 2025 trying to find a job. I was the two-year wonder child that flamed out way too soon. I'm out. And she said, well, there's a parable in the Bible where Jesus tells a story of a king who's going to another country. And right before he leaves, he gives his some servants some money and some responsibility. And he basically says, do good stuff while I'm gone. 2 of the servants take the money that they were given, they invest it, they double their money. The king comes back. He's like, great job, guys. Congratulations. Now you get to be the rulers of the equivalent number of cities because you were faithful with a little bit. Now you're ready for a bigger responsibility. And then there's one servant that is too afraid to invest what he's been given. He doesn't want to risk it in it because an investment is risky. He doesn't want to risk it. So he buries it in a hole in the ground. The king comes back. He gets in trouble. And the king's like, I gave you some tools to work with. You didn't do anything with it. You buried it in a hole in the ground because you were too afraid to risk what you'd been given. And of course, he gets in trouble. And so my mom tells me, don't let your state house seat be that investment that you're afraid to risk. So that pretty much sealed the deal for me. I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to go run for Congress then.
That's awesome because, for full disclosure, that conversation that we had that day at the barbecue, I was very nervous, and I told you I was very nervous, and it wasn't a matter of I didn't think you could do the job, and I told you that day. It was a matter of there were so many people who were preparing to announce for that seat, and they were all coming out of Weld County. It was you and Scott James, and there was still a possibility that Lori Sane was going to run, and Barb Kirkmeyer still hadn't made her decision yet as to whether or not she was going to make another run at it. And my concern was more a matter of splitting up a vote that was going to happen with all of the, basically what happened to CD4, and having all these candidates split this massive amount, 60% of the vote, and then we end up with a nominee who we just really don't want because they're part of that extreme radical group that is causing so much problems in Colorado. That's not how it turned out. And I'm thankful that you stuck it out. I have full faith and confidence in you. And so congratulations, because you really did, like I said, just take the bull by the horns. Going to move on to some policy stuff. And since I don't know how long people can stay on, I do actually have a question from one of the viewers, EJ. And so I'm going to ask, because I think it's an appropriate question that I probably know the answer to, but he said, Gabe, I was wondering if you supported the ballot initiative a few years ago that would have ended late-term abortion in Colorado.
I think that was what was that? The due date too late, 2022.
I think that's the one. Yeah,
I
that
think
sounds
that
right.
I am trying to remember how I voted on that one because my wife and I had some major discussions over that particular one. So if you don't know my story, yeah, I'm pro-life. I'm pro-life for a lot of reasons. Probably one of the most recent poignant ones is the fact that my wife and I, we've had two kids. We've also had 8 miscarriages. And so, I've seen the heartbeat, on the ultrasound machine, and then a few weeks later, when you go back for the follow-up visit, no more heartbeat. But also, what I've learned through all of that is the Democrats just have this absolute fixation on abortion for any reason whatsoever, no questions asked, up to the moment of birth. In fact, they even go beyond that. The Democrat that I'm running against in this race, she voted. She's a big supporter of taxpayer funding for abortion. So she has voted against our military because she thinks that we need to be able to siphon more money away from the military and toward abortions. She's voted against veterans because she thinks we need to take more money away from veterans and use that to fund abortions. She's also voted against the Born Alive Act, which says that if a baby is born alive, a viable baby is born alive as a result of a botched abortion, she says that baby is not worthy of medical care even after they've been born alive. And so, with my wife having had 8 miscarriages, um, like what I learned through that is pregnancy, Democrats love their buzzwords. They love the buzzword reproductive care. Democrats don't actually care about reproductive care. They don't care one bit that my wife would actually like to get pregnancy affirming care, that she would like there to actually be some funding for research available to go and figure out why it is that she's having all of these miscarriages, to figure out how she can actually carry a pregnancy to term. Democrats don't care about that. They use the buzzword pregnancy affirming. They're not actually interested in pregnancy affirming care. They just want to sell abortions for any reason whatsoever. And so, like I said, I honestly don't remember. I remember my wife and I were split on that issue, and I honestly don't remember how I voted on that, because we were having a lot of conversations about does can my wife then continue to get pregnancy affirming care, with all of the nuances. I mean, again, I'm not a woman. I know the difference between a man and a woman. And I'm not.
You're not a birthing parent?
Yeah, no. So there's a lot of just like that, like I know enough, but there's a lot of nuances to that female reproductive care stuff that my wife is sitting there trying to explain to me about how this stuff all works together. And there's a lot of doctors that she goes to that I don't go to because I don't got the right parts.
Right.
And so she's trying to explain to me like what happens at these doctor's visits. And I'm, at a certain point, I'm like, I'm just going to have to take your word for it. Because to me, that's what's most important is that we figure out how do we best protect life, and life, there's a lot of complexities to it, particularly when you get down into the realm of 8 miscarriages and figuring out, okay, how do I protect life in this particular situation? How do I protect life in that particular situation? How do I use, can I use I mean, we've done experimental care for all of this, for all of this stuff. Can you use a drug in an off-label manner because it's part of an experimental procedure, and you're going to be part of a study group that's not available to the general public, but you meet these weird random criteria. Like we've been seen by, I say we, my wife has been seen by like the random 85-year-old Yoda doctor that never treats patients anymore. He's been doing research for 50 years, and he only comes out for like the Dr. House style research cases. Like we've gotten to that level where we're that much of an anomaly to where we get all of the research physicians that haven't actually, practiced in a clinic for 40 years because they're so deep into the weeds in research. And so just making sure that we have to protect life, but that we have the flexibility to protect all life, born and unborn, in those really weird like research situations. So
Right.
that's how I approach those things, like the due date too late initiative, and any other piece of pro life legislation.
Which kind of leads to, one of the big questions that I know you're asked at pretty much every forum and is a big topic of conversation is if there were to be a bill that came before you that would ban abortion in all 50 states and make it a federal crime, where do you stand on a national abortion ban?
Yeah. So I think that, again, I'm pro life. The pro life movement has been working for a half a century to get Roe overturned. And that happened a couple of years ago. And I think the Supreme Court was pretty clear when they sent that back to the states. They said this is an issue for the states to be able to address. And so I don't see any reason to reverse half a century worth of work by the pro life movement. And even, even President Trump does not support a national abortion ban. So I don't think that this is a national issue. I think the Supreme Court was very, very clear in sending this to the states. And so it's up to the states now to figure out how do they best preserve all life, born and unborn.
So moving to your actual race now between now and November, one of the things that cost us the election in 2022, and one of the main reason that I ran for chair of Congressional District 8 was because Senator Kirkmeyer had absolutely no support out of the executive board for the Congressional District 8 region in the last race. They were not happy with her as candidate, so they basically just laid down and gave up. Whereas I come from more of the mindset that, A, we have to have a majority, we have to keep a majority, and then we can work on, for lack of better terms, purity tests, I guess. I hate that, and I don't like it in general, but we got to get them elected. And once the primary is over, the primary is the time for everybody to determine who they want to be the candidate. Colorado election laws are Colorado election laws. The only way that they're going to change is to go out there and beat the path and make them change. So I wanted to make sure that whomever won the Congressional District 8 Assembly and the nomination was going to get support from that particular body. As you know, a couple nights ago, I was replaced. They finally had the meeting to replace me as chair. The new chair of CD8 is Carl Hoops out of Adams County, making the new vice chair Bob Patterson out of Larimer County. How confident are you going into November that the support that wasn't there for Barb 2 years ago will be there for you now?
Yeah. And so one of the things that I've worked really, really hard on is being able to build those bridges, build that I'm going to call it collaboration. So nobody needs another spineless politician. And I've sworn 3 oaths payable up to and including my life. So I know what my principles are. I know those things that I was quite literally willing to die for 3 separate times: U.S. Army, Colorado Army, National Guard, and as a police officer. So I know those principles I'll never compromise. But that said, I can collaborate with anybody. And I'm a big believer in what Reagan said about, the Reagan's 11th commandment: speak no ill of a fellow Republican. I'm a big believer in a lot of the other, Reagan big tent ideas, where he says somebody that agrees with you 80% of the time, that's an 80% ally, not a 20% traitor. And so I've worked really hard to have those relationships with, I think most folks know there's a couple of different factions in the Republican Party. I've worked really hard to build those relationships with all sides of the Republican Party. Like you mentioned earlier, that's why I can go through the assembly process and get 62% of the vote in a 3-way race through assembly, because the grassroots know me, they trust me, they know what I stand for, and that they know that I was homeschooled all 12 years here in Colorado. They know that I went to a college that didn't take government funding because that college wanted to maintain its academic freedom. And as a result of that, I lost out on like a $50,000 ROTC scholarship that I ultimately ended up, had to pay back my student loans in a combat zone in the Middle East.
Wait, you paid back your student loans?
I did, yeah. I
Well, good
deployed
for
for a
you.
year.
Congratulations.
I deployed for a year and I got some tax-free money because I was in a combat zone and there's nothing to buy when you're in the middle of the desert. So then I paid off my student loans when I came back.
Sorry, continue. I had to throw that out there.
I know. So the grassroots know me, they trust me. But then I can turn around and I can point to my legislative record, which says that in a super minority down at the state capitol, 19 Republicans to 46 Democrats, I still got almost 60% of my bills passed. Over a majority of my bills passed because I'm focused on solving problems. I'm focused on addressing those dinner table issues that make life better for everyday Americans and everyday Coloradans. That's why I've got 2/3 of the mayors, 2/3 of the sitting mayors right now in the 8th Congressional District are not supporting their incumbent congresswoman who theoretically represents them. They're frustrated with the representation that she's providing, and so they've thrown their support behind me. And so I really do have I can bridge those divides, I can bridge those gaps, I can bring people together in consensus, and that includes, as you were talking about, the executive committee for the 8th Congressional District. I have good relationships with all of those folks, and they know they can pick up the phone, they can call me. Hey, guess what? My wife and I don't agree on everything, but we hang together. We've been married for 15 years this August. One deployment, 10 years of being a cop. We can work through those issues, and at the end of the day, we can support each other, and we can do what Reagan said, which is know that somebody that agrees with you 80% of the time is an 80% ally, not a 20% traitor. So I'm feeling very confident that we've put together a really, really big coalition, and it's not just Republicans. This is moderates. This is even conservative-leaning Democrats who understand that their party has left them behind, and that there's no place for an old school America loving JFK style Democrat in the modern Democrat Party anymore. I've got the support of some of those folks too. And so that's, I think, what's going to carry us to victory in November is the fact that from the Republican grassroots all the way up to, I mean, I was meeting with unions the other day. We all know unions typically support Democrats, but there's a lot of unions that are pretty upset that Democrats want to just get rid of oil and gas entirely. And so they're scratching their heads going, I didn't move. I feel like the Democrat Party left me. Those are the folks that I can build consensus with. That's the coalition that I've been working to put together, not just on the CD8 executive committee, but from the community as a whole. And that's what's going to bring us to victory in November.
Nice. And you're absolutely right. And I think we saw that in the primary on the Democrat side, that how many of your more moderate JFK type Democrats are frustrated and looking for a different answer because they said no to people like Elizabeth Epps and they said no to people like Tim Hernandez. So I think there really is, and my guess is if Yadira Caraveo would have had a primary, she probably would have been said no to as well. There is that people are starting to recognize that it's gone way too far and something needs to come back to that center. So talking about your record at the state house leads into the next question that I know has been kind of one of the bone of contentions for the Libertarian Party, and your vote on the civil asset forfeiture bill. Can you kind of address to any libertarians that may see this video, your vote on that, and how are you approaching that faction of the voter out there that we know played an instrumental part in keeping Senator Kirkmeyer out of office 2 years ago?
Yeah, so it's actually at the Republican Rumble debate down at the Grizzly Rose. So obviously we had the Republicans there, but the Libertarians also had a candidate there. So we're talking to some of these folks. I'm talking to some of the Libertarian military veterans. And we're all talking about, the reason a lot of veterans tend to be very small government types that don't particularly trust the government is because we worked for the government. We know all the dumb stuff that happens behind the scenes in the military. And so it's not really a big leap to be able to extrapolate that out to the rest of the dysfunction that we see around us that ultimately has its roots in the government. So I am a small government conservative. I worked for the government for 22 years. I know all of the dumb things that the government does. I know where all of the dysfunction is in the government. And so I don't trust the government. That's why I am where I am politically. There's only 6 things the government is supposed to be doing, and that's listed in the preamble to the Constitution. Form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. That is what the government, particularly the federal government, is supposed to be doing. That's the constitutional limits of its authority. So I was homeschooled all 12 years because my parents didn't trust the public education system to give me the type of education they wanted me to have. I homeschool my kids. My kids have gone to charter school. We've done public school because I also know that there's other options out there that I think better serve my kids to get them the education that they deserve. Um, so I am totally open to reforming civil asset forfeiture, but we have to have all of the stakeholders at the table when we have that conversation. And that was why I couldn't get to a yes vote on that particular bill, is because some of the major stakeholders who were not a part of that conversation were our public safety folks, state patrol, law enforcement, all of our drug interdiction units. We know that fentanyl is the #1 killer of Americans ages 18 to 45. We know that Colorado is the #2 state in the nation for teenagers overdosing and dying on drugs. And my concern with the way that bill was written, and this concern was shared by all of the public safety folks who showed up to testify, was as written, this bill will significantly impair our ability to take away guns and cash from known drug dealers. And so, like I said, I put together an emergency stakeholder meeting that morning. It wasn't my bill. I just knew it was coming in front of my committee. And so when I, talked to the sponsors and I was like, hey, I see your bill, here's some of the questions that I've gotten from some of my stakeholders, the people that I represent in my community. Have these conversations been had? And those conversations had not been had. Like, I went out, I canceled everything else I was doing that morning, and I pulled together all of these folks to try to have those conversations and figure out, is there a fix to this thing? How can we move forward with this? We couldn't get there in 6 hours of stakeholdering. And so at the end of the day, like I said, I couldn't get there because all of the public safety folks are telling me, I'm going to have to give a drug dealer his money and his guns back. You give him his money and his guns back, you're never going to see those again. Those are going to go back out into the community, kill more people, and fuel more ultimately fatal crimes. So, totally open to reforming civil asset forfeiture. I have a lot of issues with just the civil system that we have in the United States and in Colorado. I've run bills every year to reform other parts of that civil system. So I'm totally open to reforming it, but it has to, you have to have those public safety stakeholders at the table to make sure that we're increasing due process protections for citizens, but at the same time, I'm not handing a drug dealer his guns and his money back, because that's not good for public safety.
And that's the perfect segue into the next question, because most of the bills that you have sponsored and or supported have always had a public safety component to it, because that's your background and that's your passion. And that's awesome and great. So in Congress, how do we solve the border control problem?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is acknowledging that it's a problem. You
right.
can't something until you acknowledge it's a problem. And like you said, I think folks are starting to realize it is a problem. I mean, we can see that just in how the narrative has changed in Colorado over the last couple of years. When Colorado ends up having to shell out roughly 300 million taxpayer dollars from December of 2022 to date to support illegal immigrants who have come to Colorado and to Denver specifically because of Denver's, widely broadcast status as a sanctuary city. When Denver can't even keep its Department of Motor Vehicles open 40 hours a week, when the Denver Police Department is taking an $8 million cut to go pay for folks who have illegally entered this country, that's the part where I think folks start saying, we've got an issue here. This is now a problem. Those basic government services that government should be providing are not being provided because all of this money is going to an illegal immigrant crisis. And then, we know most of the folks that are coming here are not hardened criminals. They're not cartel members or something like that. They're folks that, the United States is the greatest country on earth. They want to come to the greatest country on earth. But you also have the people that I interacted with for 10 years as a cop, who are absolutely exploiting that open border, your cartels, your drug dealers, your international criminal elements, your terrorists and terrorist associates. I mean, I did an interview with Denver Post, and the day after that, 8 ISIS-affiliated folks were contacted at the southern border. So we know there is a small element of hardened criminals and terrorists that are exploiting our southern border. It wasn't that long ago that planes were crashing into buildings and, motivated young folks like me to go join the military. I think that people are They're re-remembering that. They're seeing the problems that are associated with the southern border being wide open. And that's what's going to give the impetus, because at the end of the day, we are a self-governed society. That's what gives the impetus for folks that legitimately want to sit down, have conversations, and come up with real solutions to fix these. That's what gives us the political capital to be able to do that. So step one, acknowledge it's a problem. Step two, we just have to secure the border. So that means, all of the unpopulated areas where you don't have border crossing points, but that also means bolstering the security that we have and the ability to do inspections at the checkpoints that we have, the border crossing points, Brownsville or El Paso or any of these other major ports of entry, because there is a ton of lawful legal commerce that goes back and forth across the border. We can't, pinch that commerce off, but we have to have the tools to be able to find the drug shipments, the human smugglers, all of the things that are using those ports of entry. And then after that, after we actually have control of our border of what's moving back and forth across it, then it doesn't necessarily have to be sequential, but we have to make sure that our law enforcement, federal, state, and local, has the tools to be able to go after those folks who are illegally in our country and are causing problems. My Democrat opponent voted for a law in Colorado that makes it illegal for me as a police officer to call up my federal counterparts and say, hey, I just pulled over a drug dealer. I think he's illegally in this country. You want to come get your guy so we can deport him? That's illegal for me to make that phone call. So we need to, again, get back to letting our federal, state, and local law enforcement officers do their jobs. Don't handcuff them with a political agenda. Let them do their jobs and prioritize those folks that are illegally in our country causing problems.
I want to be cognizant of your time. Do you have time for a couple more questions?
Sure.
Cool. So, the whole budget thing, Biden has spent more money than he needs to spend in places, like you said, not the top 6 things that you're supposed to be doing as a government. What do you think are the top 3 things that you want to see focused on most once you get to DC? What are your 3 top priorities?
So we kind of already beat one to death. Public safety, and to me, public safety extends to the border, making sure that we are controlling what comes into our country. So that's one. Number 2 is cost of living in our economy. The 8th Congressional District is an economic powerhouse. The northern part of the district is the 4th highest energy producing region in the nation. It's the 8th highest ag producing region in the nation. And then the southern part of the district down in Adams County, that's the industrial center of Colorado. It's the only county in the state that's got all 6 interstates that are in Colorado that run through it. That's where all the manufacturing, distribution, and transportation occurs. So raw materials in the northern part of the district, transportation and manufacturing and distribution in the southern part. This district is what fuels the infrastructure that allows Colorado to go. This is where the roads get made. This is where the energy gets produced so that the light switches go on. This is where the raw basic materials that fuel our modern day life come from. And the problem is this district is getting pummeled under the red tape from my Democrat opponent and Joe Biden's administration. And I'll give you a concrete example. This district, just in the energy sector, has lost $7 billion in the last 2 years because of how Joe Biden and his allies in Congress, like my Democrat opponent, have handcuffed the energy sector. So not only are we losing $7 billion of economic output, that then translates into higher cost of living because energy for everything is more affordable, from turning on the lights in your house to being able to generate the plastic that your pound of ground beef is wrapped in. All of that stuff goes up in price. Not only that, that impacts our schools, that impacts our roads, that impacts our fire departments, that impacts our water distribution systems, because when you lose $7 billion worth of energy valuation, that's $7 billion worth of taxes, of property revenue that has left this district. I was talking to my local school district here. It's not a huge school district. We got 3 elementary schools, 1 middle school, 1 high school here in the Fort Lupton area, Weld 8. They've lost $1 million in revenue just from the hit that the energy sector took, because the energy sector pays a lot of property tax. So, second thing is empowering our economy, cutting the red tape, allowing American workers and American industry and the American economy to function again, so that my schools here in Weld County can actually afford to pay their teachers a living wage because they're actually being able to get the money that they need to be able to do those sorts of things. So we can fix our roads, so we can fix our bridges, so that people can get good jobs, so the cost of living goes down. We need to fix our economy. Districts like the 8th Congressional District are absolutely critical to that because, I mean, they've been hit to billions of dollars of loss as a result of these failed policies. So public safety, the economy, and then the third thing is always for me, it's around kids. So education, but then again, we were talking the civil system earlier. One of the bills that I've run every year down at the state capitol is a bill to ensure that parents have due process in all of these civil situations where the government intervenes into the family structure. So child welfare, child custody, and social services. When you have social services visit your house, what parents need to understand is the government has all of the money and all of the lawyers, and because this is a civil situation, you as the parent basically have no rights. And so I have fought tooth and nail to reform that civil system to ensure that parents and families actually do have due process, that they actually do have rights, and that it's not this one-sided David versus Goliath situation where you have all of the money and all the lawyers on the side of government that's then intruding into the family structure. And particularly for your low income and your minority communities, they have no way to fight back. And so they just get railroaded by the government. So when we talk about school choice, when we talk about empowering parents, when we talk about protecting the family, for me, a big piece of that is making sure that in civil situations where the government is intruding into the family structure, that there's due process and there are rights and resources for those families so that they don't end up just getting railroaded by the state.
Which is, again, great segue into the next question. So many people want to see the Department of Education disbanded and dissolved. You talk about, the red tape and all of the unfunded mandates that are on business and the economy. There is so much of that on public education right now from the top down, the federal government, the state government, everything. Where do you sit on disbanding the Department of Education?
It definitely needs to be a lot smaller than it currently is. And I'll give you a Colorado specific example here. So obviously you have the federal Department of Education, and then the state, and then it goes all the way down to your local school boards. Here in the state of Colorado, we could get $500 million into our classrooms tomorrow if we just cut bureaucracy in our state Department of Education, not to any crazy level, if our bureaucracy was merely the size of all of the surrounding states. The surrounding states, all the states that surround Colorado, are able to get about 65% of their budget into the classroom. So teachers, school supplies, the stuff that's actually occurring in the classroom. In Colorado, we only get 58% of our budget into the classroom. So just by making Colorado as efficient as the surrounding states would give us an additional $500 million in the classroom without having to raise a penny of extra money. And a lot of that stuff comes not only from the mismanagement here in Colorado under the ruling left, but that goes all the way back to the federal level into all of the mandates and all of the bureaucracy and all of the red tape that ultimately has its tentacles in the federal Department of Education. And so that's something where we need to do a deep dive on that. We need to figure out how much of this stuff can just go away entirely. And if there is anything where there is potentially, the feds ought to be involved just to help synchronize things across 50 states. How do we make that as small and as efficient as possible so that at the end of the day, parents and their kids are the ones that are making the decisions so that they can get the best education that's available to them and their family that suits their life needs? Again, you heard my story. My kids have gone to public school, charter school, and homeschool, because as we've gone through different phases in our life, my kids have needed different things and different things have worked out for families. We need to make sure that families can pick the education that works for them and their kids. And that means putting them back in charge, which ultimately is accomplished by reducing all of this red tape, starting with the Federal Department of Education.
And I was so focused on what you were saying, I had my next question in mind, and now it's gone. So I'm going to sit here and try to think about it for a second because I don't know what happened there. But uh, as you move forward into November, kind of tell the voters what it is you may need from them, what your plans are, where they can find, where they can help you.
Yeah, so I mean, the one-stop shop for all of that stuff is my website, electgabeevans.com, elect GABEEVANS.com. You'll have two E's right next to each other. So that tells you about the campaign, that tells you the things that I'm focused on. That also has the button to be able to donate if you can contribute money, because unfortunately campaigns are not cheap to run. It also has the volunteer button where if you want to get engaged with the campaign, you want to get the updates, you want to help us make phone calls, knock on doors, send text messages, do all of the other logistical things involved with the campaign. You can do all of that from the website. Again, electgabeevans.com. And at the end of the day, when you boil down what is a campaign and how do you run a successful campaign, they talk about three things. They talk about having a candidate that carries a message that resonates with folks, and then just having the resources to be able to get that message out there. So if you like who I am, if you like the message I'm carrying, then really the last piece of running a winning campaign is just having the resources to get that message out there. We got about 450,000 voters in the 8th Congressional District. So if you can volunteer to make phone calls, send text messages, knock on doors, talk to your social network, because the political advertising is about to get real thick and heavy here in the 8th Congressional District. So if you have existing relationships with friends or family members that also live in the 8th Congressional District, they're going to listen to you long before they listen to any of my political ads. Just talking to your friends and your family members is a huge way to help out the campaign. And if you can do more, like I said, visit the website, sign up, we'll be in touch.
And you're right. I think the last count that I saw, the Republican National Committee has already tied up about $8 or $9 million worth of television ads. The Democrat National Committee has tied up about $5 million worth of ads for your opponent. And so there's this district, the 8th Congressional District, from day one has been top radar for the RNC. We keep hearing that it's one of the most important districts. So you are going to be bombarded with, everybody's going to be bombarded with advertisement and mailers and text messages and push polls and all this other stuff. We may see something like we've never seen before in the 8th Congressional District this year. So your message in the final few minutes here, what haven't we talked about that you would like to make sure that message is out there to the constituents in CD8?
So the 8th Congressional District was drawn, if you don't keep up with the intricacies of how districts get drawn, every 10 years after the census, the districts have to be redrawn so that, as people move around, each district has roughly the same population in it, so everybody has equal representation. So in 2020, Colorado tried a new thing. Rather than having the legislature draw the districts, which then, whichever party is in power can draw the map to favor them. In 2020, Colorado had an independent redistricting commission composed of 4 Republicans, 4 Democrats, and 4 independents draw these maps. And one of the charges that they were given was when you draw these maps, when you draw these new districts to make sure that everybody has equal representation, you're supposed to keep communities of interest together. The 8th Congressional District was drawn to give the Hispanic community in Colorado, there's a big Hispanic population north of Denver up to Greenville. And so the 8th Congressional District was actually drawn to keep that community of interest, out of many other reasons, was drawn to keep that community of interest together. The 8th Congressional District is a 40% Hispanic district. It is the highest percentage of Hispanics of any of the congressional districts in Colorado. And so that's important because the story of the Hispanic community is my story. My mom is traditional. She did not give me Chavez. She didn't hyphenate my last name. But my mom is a first generation a first generation American from Mexico. My grandfather, Abuelito Chavez, was born in Cuauhtemoc, Chihuahua. He came to the United States. Took him 13 years to get his citizenship. He earned his citizenship in World War II, along with two Purple Hearts. He got blown up in September of 1944 and again in April of 1945. That's how he earned his citizenship. And I have his early writings, where he talks about how hard it was to come to a new country, to learn the language, to learn the culture, to try to find work, to try to find housing. And he talks about how he did that, his family did that because they wanted to make a better life. They wanted that American dream for, and he talks about his kids and his grandkids. And so, myself, the grandson of an immigrant from Mexico, a Chavez who married a Calderon. My mom's maiden name is Chavez. My grandma on my mom's side is Maria Calderon. Like, that's a huge part of who I am. And where I am today is because of the American dream. It's because the liberty and the freedom that we have in the United States enabled my grandfather, my abuelito, and my abuelita to be able to build generational wealth, to give my mom a better starting point in life than they had, who then was able to give me a better starting point in my life than they had, generational wealth. And that is, at the end of the day, that's the American dream. The ability to live your life as you see fit, to have the safety and the security to be able to go live your best version of the American dream. And so that's what I want. That's what I did as a cop. That's what I did as a soldier, because I love my country. I love my state. I love my community to the point where I'm willing to put my life on the line 3 separate times for my country, my state, my community. And it's to protect that American dream. It's to make sure that future generations have that safe, affordable place to live, to work, to raise families, and to lead their lives as they best see fit. That's what I want. That's the story that I have ultimately. That is the common theme through my life. That's the motivation that's led me to do everything. And I think that's something that resonates with folks, that resonates when I have conversations with the Hispanic folks in this district. It resonates because that's what they want to. And so at the end of the day, like I've said before, I've sworn 3 oaths up to and including my life. I know what my principles are. Nobody needs another spineless politician. So I know those things I'll never compromise on. But I can collaborate with anybody. It's why 2/3 of the mayors in my district are backing me. It's why even in the super minority, I got almost 60% of my bills passed, because I'm focused on preserving that American dream so that Colorado and the United States remains the best place to live, to work, to raise families for folks that have been here for hundreds of years, or folks that have legally come to this country because they too want to follow what my grandfather did and achieve the American dream for themselves and their families.
And I will correct you. You've sworn 4 times, because you swore as a House district representative for the state of Colorado.
But that one wasn't payable with life.
No, it didn't. We would say it didn't put you in danger or whatever, but you did swear an allegiance to the Constitution a 4th time. When you became a House member. So I do want to thank you for your service all across the board, from your time in the Army National Guard, obviously as a police officer. You definitely have proven your love for this state and this country. And I thank you for coming on today. Hopefully we'll have you on again before the election and go from there. But good luck with your campaign. If there's anything else, we can do for you, let me know. But I do appreciate you coming on today.
Of course. Thanks so much for having me on.
Absolutely. Have a good rest of your afternoon.
Thanks. You too. Take care.
See ya. Bye-bye. So that was fun. I'm really excited to be able to get this going, and hopefully I can bring you guys many more candidates that are working their way toward the 2024 election. For those that are not familiar, I'm doing this from the state of Wyoming, and it's a strange situation, I would suppose. I have my naysayers who are like, you moved to Wyoming, why do you care? Because I care about Colorado, and I will always care about Colorado. I lived in House District 50, Senate District 13, Congressional District 8. It wasn't always 8, obviously, but I've lived in that same area for 55 years of my life. And it wasn't until I moved to Wyoming that that changed. And so I have 6 generations of my family living in Colorado. I will continue to fight for Colorado. I hope that I can help folks continue to get the information that they need to be able to vote the way that will help this country and this state get back on track come November. So from my home office in Wyoming, I'm going to sign off for the day, but we will be back. I'm thinking hopefully my next guest will be George Brockler. He was supposed to be on Tuesday, but he got caught up in a meeting, and so we're going to have to postpone. I'm not going to officially announce that, but hopefully he will be my next special guest. Thank you from Simply Sherrie Peif. The simple truth, simply put, simply Sherrie. Have a good afternoon. See ya.